As I finish up high school, I already know the parts that I'd rather forget. But what are the moments that future me will be so glad that I remembered? I know I can't answer that right now because as new memories are made, favorites change. So, I asked a few people who have experienced a bit more of life than I have a simple question. What's one of your favorite memories?
One of my favorite memories is
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 One of my favorite memories is watching my great-grandmother cook in the kitchen. She actually was a cook for our family restaurant, which was called Casa Martinez. Had a specialty that she made only for our family. She didn't make it at the restaurant, and it was called gorditas. So they were fat little tortillas, and she would pat them with her hands, and then she would put them on the griddle, and she would throw them in the oven to keep them warm until it was time for us all to gather around the table and eat them. And all they needed was a little pat of melted butter on top to taste just like magic. She didn't speak English, and my Spanish was not great, so we had funny, broken conversations back and forth in Spanglish. Just listen to her talk about her childhood, listen to her talk about her parents and how she came to live in the United States with her daughter. So I named my daughter after Granny. So my daughter is Isabel, that was her name. And this is really weird, but Isabel is the only one in our family who can make tortillas and make them puff up like my great-grandmother did. And we always think that she's got the touch because she's the namesake.
One of my favorite memories is when my mother surprised me at a track meet in Raleigh, North Carolina. The reason why it's a favorite event is because I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and people don't travel a lot on highways. So for my mom to travel anywhere outside of our little town, it was a lot in general. So I was preparing to go to my event, the triple jump, and as I was walking to the event station, I heard this woman's voice say, "Can you tell me where I can find Randy Bell?" I turned to look, and I see this lady, and it's my mother. And these tears just were flowing down my face, and I ran over to her, and I was hugging her, and we were rocking back and forth. She stayed for the entire meet, and I won the event. I actually did a PR, which is a personal record. I actually had one of the best meets of my life.
Do you think that was because she was there?
I'm positive it's because she was there.
One of my favorite memories is going fishing with my dad. We had a camp that was on Lake Erie, and it was really a mobile home. And next door to the mobile home that we had, my grandparents had one. We all spent our summers there. And we one day went fishing with my father. It was just my sister and I. My brother, who was 5 years older, did not come. And we went out onto the lake, and somehow we ended up on our little motorboat over the top of some school of perch. So as we're fishing, my sister and I, of course, I wouldn't touch the worms or the fish. So my fishing experience was me holding the pole and then reeling it in, and my dad taking the fish off. And it was just one after another after another. My sister and I, my father was going back and forth between us, over and over again. And we caught all these fish. And the funny thing was that my father never caught a fish, just my sister and I. So at the end of the fishing trip, my father finally reels up his reel, and he had this itty bitty fish on there that was about this big. So the whole time he had a fish. This memory has become more important to me because my father passed away about 10, 11 years ago, and last summer we finally got together to spread his ashes. And we decided we were each going to talk about a memory of our father. It took a lot for me to come up with a memory of me doing something with my father. And this is one I came up with because it was a very happy memory. It was just special.
One of my favorite memories is the day of my bar mitzvah. Well, I mean, first of all, there was the learning of my Torah portion, my Haftorah portion of prayers, and that took months in advance. And I was really nervous. I should actually step back. During one of the practices, I was in the middle of practicing my Torah portion, and somebody ran in and they said, "President Reagan's been shot." And that ended the practice pretty quickly. Anyway, but then I got up on the bima, and I just remember just doing it. It was like autopilot. And That's when I noticed Papa Richard was crying. I remember I was trying to be a good role model for my brother, who had to do it a couple of years later. It really was a lesson in hard work and a significant tie to my family, and there's a heritage there.
One of my favorite memories, which lingers with me to this day, was a cruise that we took from the Philippines to San Francisco. The cruise took place after my father, who spent a year in Vietnam. He would come visit us in the Philippines, so we, lived in the Far East in a town called Los Angeles. This memory has impacted me, I think, in many ways. When you're on the ocean for a month, there's just something about it that you become fascinated by. And many years later, I always had this desire to scuba dive. And in fact, prior to the pandemic, for the previous 2 years, I was able to go back to the Philippines and scuba dive there. It is just an amazing experience.
This memory has impacted me probably in a variety of ways. Probably the biggest thing is, as I think about it, I wanted to make sure that my children had more memories of doing things with me and being there, and I hope they do.
My kids being B'nai Mitzvah have affected this memory by, it's kind of all encompassing. On one hand, you're proud. On one hand, you're looking at the children grow up. On the other hand, it's that generation to generation thing. The phrase is l'dur v'dur.
Time has affected how I remember it, being that the older I get, the more precious that memory becomes. Because, now I can actually understand how important it is for my children when I go to their events.
My dad died when my children were quite young. And so it's funny because I don't fish, but my son really likes to fish. And especially when he was younger, it was like his favorite thing to do. And, I was sad that he never got to do that with my dad. So it became more of a memory maybe because of that connection with my son.
Time has definitely affected how I remember this memory because I'm getting older and I'm getting more sentimental, and I definitely have been able to, remember the good old days. And I think I forget about, some of the family bickering or some of the issues that were happening. And so over time, I've been able to sort of create this, this version of the kitchen at my granny's house that was just this perfect place.
Maybe the most important thing that I could say is my family is very, 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 very close. And because we've traveled a lot and we were in places where you had to rely on your relationships with your siblings. And even though we fought a lot, we're very, very close as a family.
My advice to younger people would be to memorialize your memories.
It would be to keep records, both photographs and videos, sound recordings.
I would say that everything you do in life is a precious moment, especially when it has an impact on how you feel about yourself.
I would say make a lot of memories. Make them.
The things that are really important is, your family and how you grow up and the things that frame who you are. And a lot of times that's your parents and your grandparents and your family. So take the mental and physical space to make room for those memories.
The advice I would give to someone of your age about memories and remembering is take your face out of your phone and look around, or else you might miss something. because it goes by really, really quickly. And the next thing you know, you're 53 years old and you're sitting in a chair being interviewed by your daughter who's going off to college, and you're like, ugh, how did I get here? And it goes by very fast, so take it all in. And I got a Walkman as one of my gifts, which, in case you don't know what a Walkman is, at the time it was a thing about the size of a book, and it played cassette tapes into headphones. Great memories.